A victory Monday in Austin as Texas sends A&M home packing from DKR. Cody, it was a big game on the day after Thanksgiving, and it's our first time to kind of be here talking about it. We're going to get into that. We're also talk about the offensive line deep dig. The dishes are done, man. The deep dig's over for the season. We'll talk about why. People might say why. Texas still is clinging to hope, maybe on life support for the CFP and certainly a bowl game, but we'll talk about why the deep dig is a regular season column. Maybe that'll help give you some perspective as to what to think about this season. And also Steve Sarkeesian today on Colin Cowherd starting his sort of public tour that started out minutes after the football game ended. It was crazy, Cody, how he just had the talking points ready to read off in case of a win, for making Texas's case as a 3-loss team for the college football playoff. We're going to talk about all that right now. First, let's think about our great presenting sponsor, the Man Eye Institute. See life better at the Man Eye Institute. Their phone number is 1-844-WOW-2020, 844-WOW-2020, where you can go to get your next level LASIK. You can go to fix your cataracts, your astigmatism, anything weird with your eyes. I mean, not weird. It's perfectly natural to lose your vision as you get older. And there's no need to go through life like that. You can always see life better at the Man Eye Institute. 1-844-WOW-2020. 844-WOW-2020, the Man Eye Institute, our great presenting sponsor. See life better. All right, Cody. The reason why the deep dig is a regular season column is because whenever I started doing it in 2013, this whole process of grading every snap by every offensive lineman and charting every play by every defensive player and keeping track of the productivity of these players and all the rest of it, right? It was because I was hoping that I would be able to have in future years a granular way to look back and compare players and compare, situations over years, right? So that's why there's the historical comparison charts on there. You can kind of see like, okay, DJ Campbell's playing about like Zach Shackelford played in his senior year or something like that, right? It's a good way to do it, but the reason why it's only regular season is because I started in 2013 doing this. Now it's 2025. And so this is the 13th year. And, my first, after that 2013 season, my first 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons doing the deep dig, Texas either finished with 6 or 7 losses in each of those seasons. And so it was never a lock that Texas was going to make a bowl game. Right. So if I had a bowl game or a conference championship game or something like that into the mix for one team, but not for another team, it's going to screw up it won't screw up the per game metrics. Right. But it will screw up the overall volume based metrics that the deep dig takes into consideration. And that wouldn't be fair to the, players on these teams that might have been good, like say Malik Jefferson or something like that. That another linebacker from, 10 years in the future would get a whole extra game, 2 games, 3 games on him as far as the volume-based stats. And so I think with the heartburn that fans are feeling right now about Texas being a 9-3 football team that is on the outside looking in for the college football playoff, I would just say, man, it's hard to look back right now with the way things feel about the discourse, especially now with how social media has gotten so rotten and how fans from other teams are, how people act, and it's nothing new as far as people have been on message boards and stuff like that. But, I see a lot of Texas fans out there making their case and saying like, well, this isn't right because of this and this and this. And this team says this, but what about this loss they had? And like stuff like that. Right. You can get caught up in all the dyspepsia of that. And it's easy to forget that, man, the reason I only do the deep dig for a regular season thing is because I used to not even know if this team was going to win 6 games to go ahead and make a bowl. It's so Texas is in a better spot now. With that being said, the deep dig did tell us a lot about why certain things happen this year whenever you just take the whole sample and look at it and compare it to previous years. But before we get to that, Cody, I wanted to ask you, because I was doing the work on this stuff the whole day. And technically, it would have been considered work if I would have listened in on Colin Cowherd to Steve Sarkeesian. It's probably something I should have done for work. I didn't know that he was on there. What did he say, and what were your takeaways from that?
I mean, he said a lot. I mean, he was also on the SEC morning wake up thing that's on
Oh,
ESPN.
so he's just going for the he's doing the car wash.
Well, I thought he might have been on McAfee too. Maybe he'll be on McAfee tomorrow, but I didn't see him on McAfee. Um, I guess Coward kind of come off. If you go back and listen to it, and as someone that's obviously in the Texas media, you will understand. I think you'll pick up on the cues of which Coward doesn't know much of anything about Texas. He just kind of was like, "Yeah, you look good against. I mean, you look like you were like the best team that competed with Ohio State, and like, you look good against them. I think you're the best team that could compare with them. Like, you're the closest team that could play with them. Like, you know where I'm going nowhere when I'm trying to explain that. Like that's how Coward was kind of talking with Sark, and so kind of to me it was like a dead giveaway. That like this was like a Sark reached out to Coward, he's like, hey, let's and a lot of what he said was basically just reiterating the stuff that we already know: the wins against the top 10 teams, the best since LSU in 2019, and talking about how hard this team fought down the stretch. This team's 6-1 since that Florida loss, right? And he said they started to play their best football, and he said that Oklahoma game was a turning point where they just said, what are we going to be? And people can talk about the difference in beating a certain team by so many points, but you play 4 top 10 teams down the stretch. You beat 3 of them. You lose to Georgia. Like it's a gauntlet playing the SEC. And then I think the biggest thing that he said was, if we're going to look at records, and he goes, basically, that's exactly what the AP does. We know that. He says everybody that votes in the AP can't watch every game. They look at the records. They look at the results. They say this team was favored by 28. They won by 31, and they go with what the record is. And you can see that in how the records are laid out, in the AP's laid out, with undefeated teams and 1-loss teams and 2-loss and 3-loss teams. There's no creativity or uh, next level thought to it like the committee is supposed to be. This is what basically what Sark was saying. And he said, if we're just going to look at records, I'm going to have to reevaluate the future schedule and take the best and take into account what's best for the University of Texas. Basically, inkling at like, if you don't give us credit for scheduling that Ohio State game, which is exactly what Urban Meyer also said on Coward Show an hour before Sark was on there. Urban says that Texas should be in the college football playoff. And he said, if you don't give them credit for scheduling that Ohio State game and get on the airplane and fly into Ohio State and play in that football game, then you just might as well be ready for Old Dominion to be on everyone's schedule, just like Indiana, because nobody's questioning Indiana. People just are, oh, yeah, Indiana, great, awesome, cool, they're in. They're in the Big Ten championship, and they're automatically in. And if you're not even gonna blink at that schedule, but then on the other side, you're gonna obviously you can look at it and say, if Texas schedules Old Dominion and not Ohio State, they're 10-2, they're in. You have to give a little bit of credit. That's basically what he's saying. It sounds like, and I think Ketch talked about it in the noon show, you have to have tweets ready. You have to have a press conference, a press release, maybe not a press conference, but a press release ready. If you don't get in tomorrow night into the top 10 and you're not in the college football bracket, press release. Boom. The Notre Dame series is canceled.
Well, the press release wouldn't the press release be wouldn't it be better
schedule the press release for the middle of their show. So as soon as they show Texas is 15th and they're on the outside looking in, you go press release dump.
Right, but wouldn't that be a little bit too early? Shouldn't it be during the selection show?
No, because during the selection show, then you say, we've decided to drop our Ohio State game next year as well.
Oh, so you're saying
it's a double whammy. You thought we were playing. Now we just subbed out Ohio State and we're picking up Texas State.
Yeah, we're playing New Mexico at DKR, right?
We're gonna. This is what Ketch said. Ketch said we've decided to pay Ohio State $2 million, and you know what? We went up there. They don't have to come here. We'll pay them $2 million, and we're gonna go schedule New Mexico. We're good. You told us what you wanted. You want wins. You don't want good games. You don't want good football. You want to see wins. All right.
Yeah. Well, no, we're going to give you good football. We're going to give you good football in a 9-game SEC conference schedule. We're going to give you real good football, right?
Yeah, that's not the point. That's not what I'm saying.
We're against real good teams. We're going to go up against LSU now with Kiffin.
But our week 1 in college football is going to be shot. You're not going to get nothing. Week 0, week 1, it's going to be fish against shark.
Yeah, no, I'd be all for it. I'd be all for it because people say, because what you get from people, they say like yada yada yada, win win win. You know, Ohio State this, Ohio State that. Don't lose to Florida. And you're like, well, dude, Texas plays in the SEC, right? Like they're gonna have to go through this gauntlet anyway. And sometimes those games jump up and bite you. And as I'm sitting here doing the deep dig, I'm looking at that Florida game. And one of the things I can't help but notice is once you take the season in totality, you look at it and you say, okay, take the Florida game for example. That was a game when they were trying to see what they had in Nick Brooks at left guard. Nick Brooks in that game scores the lowest score of anybody on the whole season, the second lowest score in the history of the deep dig. Again, 13 years, second lowest score. He played 42 snaps in that game. He allowed 6 pressures, 2 quarterback hits, 1 run stuff, and committed 2 false start penalties on 42 snaps. He allowed disruption almost once every 3. He allowed major drive changing disruption once every, like, even if Texas goes 3 and out, he was one of the things that disrupted one of those three plays. You know, like something as small as that, man, to like your left guard, your left guard being wholly unfit to play. And I understand that Texas, they should, critics will say like, well, don't have a left guard that's wholly unfit to play. And I get it, but dude, those are the things that come up through the attrition of a season, right? Those are the things that come up, especially when the season moves to 9 games.
Yep.
And so I'm all like, I could care less if I'm Texas. If people say, oh, cowards, whatever, be like, no, dude, we're not cowards. We're the ones that are getting out in front of this because we're the first ones that have tasted what it's like to get punished for trying to go out and, take advantage of these big fun games. Sark has said it a million times. He's like, you come to Texas to play in these big games. But I was always like, dude, Sark's taking the real glass half full thing of this. I've always thought it was stupid to schedule these big out of conference games, especially with the SEC, especially after Texas goes to the SEC. Every week is a big game, dude. Every single week is a dogfight in the SEC. Ask Georgia about having to go up to Kentucky. I think that there are people out there that don't understand it, and these Big Ten fans, God bless them. I think it's a great conference. They got the two best teams right now, right? But outside of that, what are there 2, 3 others that you worry about? And then a bunch of that you're just gonna get rolled by everybody. It doesn't feel like it's that way in the SEC.
Well, it's not. Well, I think one of the interesting things that's kind of developed is the fact that I think we're 2 weeks removed from, the conversation about Texas A&M being what? Like, oh, they should be getting some first place votes, right? They should be up there in that conversation. This is a very impressive team. They should be really up in that conversation. And they haven't played anybody all year. They've played the SEC, so I can't say they haven't played anybody, but they haven't played anybody in the top half of the SEC all year. They have 0 top 10 wins in the last month and a half. Right? So they haven't exactly had the gauntlet, right? There's only one team in America that has 3 top 10 wins in the last 6 weeks. One.
Yeah.
And it's University of Texas. So just calling a square a spade, like I'm just saying, like this is
calling a square.
It's interesting that like Indiana, right? Their schedule, right? Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. They have 9 conference games, right? They get a 9th ranked Illinois team, which we now know was severely overrated, who they blew out of the building. And Indiana got a big bump and Illinois got a big drop out of that in the AP poll. They played Oregon at Oregon, which is a very, very impressive win. Maybe tied with, I would say it's side by side. Going to Eugene and beating Oregon, and then Texas beating Texas A&M are the 2 best wins in the country. You have a bad loss. Florida's a bad loss. But at the time, I think we can equally say like Alabama had a bad loss against Florida State. But at the time, it was a ranked Florida State team that had Tommy Castellanos, that nobody knew what he was going to look like. The team had a lot of fire in their belly. It was in Tallahassee. You look at the Florida loss that was in the swamp, and people don't ever they don't ever think about that. Like that Florida team was a week removed from being ranked. Yeah, they lost to USF, but USF is a foot away from making the playoff. Like
Yeah,
that
but
was a
they had a good
good
enough,
Florida team that was
they
the
had a good enough
healthiest
season
they've
where their
been
coaches
all
got hired
year.
away by Auburn.
That was the healthiest they've been all year. DJ Legwood practiced for 2 weeks, and he had never practiced for 2 weeks all year, all summer. Billy
Yeah.
Napier's back was against the wall. Like the whole thing that went to the table.
It was
Like,
one of the only games where Dallas Wilson was healthy. It's like, I mean,
yes, his
it's crazy.
debut. Like
Yeah.
that's where the committee, takes into account Jordan Travis. They should take into account that Anthony Hill didn't play against A&M and they still won by double digits. People are like, well, they should take into account that Lane Kiffin and that whole entire offensive staff isn't at Ole Miss anymore. There's people out there talking about Ole Miss getting booted out of the playoffs because of that. I think that's blasphemy, but that's a theory that's on X right now by not just, egg accounts, but like
That's not the
actual,
same. That's not the
actual
same though.
pundits.
Are they using Florida State as the reason?
Who?
These eggheads, whatever you
No.
call
I'm
them.
talking about Ole Miss. Ole
I
Miss
know,
being out of the playoff.
but are they using Florida State circa 2023 or whatever that was as the
Yes.
reason?
Yeah.
But
Right.
that
Because
isn't
that was
that.
a top 4, right? That was a top 4.
Yeah,
This is a top.
but that
It's a
isn't
different
right.
thing.
It's not right because like we're not gonna. We like Ole Miss could look good. We like Florida State came out and showed us that they were bad.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like, oh, we just think they're going to be bad. We just think they're going to be bad.
Horrible. That was one of the worst games. Was that Florida State Louisville? That was one of the worst games.
So yeah, so I forget exactly what it was. I think it was, but it was like we saw they were down to their third quarterback. It was awful. They're like, and maybe they'll get their second quarterback back from the concussion or whatever. But that guy still stinks, and like there's no way we're putting them in the college football playoff. And then Norvell cried about it. I don't think
this is the point of the committee, is what I'm getting at. Like all
the
of these
committee's cockamamie is like, dude. Here's the thing, too, and you mentioned it. I wanted to get in with you about this, and we're already running a little bit long, but I wanted to ask you the stuff about A&M, kind of questioning how good they really are. Like, whenever I look at Trevor Guzby, let's just talk about this because I look at Guzby, and one of the main takeaways I had from him for the deep dig was he looks like a guy to me that could easily go to the NFL this year and maybe even be picked in like the. I don't think he's a lock first rounder, but I do think he's one of these guys like a Connerly or something from last year. I'm not comparing him to Connerly, but I think he's a guy that people will say projects with similar tools, that kind of stuff. Maybe he can go with the number 32 pick to, I think that's where Connerly went, or was that Connerly or Simmons that went to
Simmons, but Simmons was a knee injury. Connerly was right around their same area to Washington.
Yeah. So right. So you understand what I'm saying, right? Like somebody kind of more second roundish, but could maybe get some first round consideration and stuff like that. Whenever I compare what Trevor Guzby was able to do this season and look at him historically versus his comps at Texas, his nearest comp by far is Kelvin Banks in his second to last season, which tells me that with gradual here, and this is important, gradual improvement through the season. Now, not a straight line all the way up, right? Some ups and some downs, but finishing at a higher note, right? Finishing on a higher note. He played incredible. Dude, that guy owns Texas A&M. Is Cassius Howell even good? Like, I mean, I know that I know like because if Cassius Howell was good, it's like, it's the same thing that I asked last year. I'm like, is Shamar Stewart good? Is Shamar Turner good? Are these guys good? Because they were getting completely neutralized by Trevor Guzby last season, right? So here he is. I'm wondering, he's probably going to make a decision for one. I think he should come back because I think he's on that Kelvin Banks trajectory. And if you're on that legit trajectory where you can be a top 10, top 15 pick, you should probably come back. If you're just trying to get what you can and just squirrel it away now and see if you can get it, I totally get it. But how much do you weigh in that performance versus Cassius Howell versus how you weighed the performance last year versus the Shamar Stewarts versus the Nick Scortons versus the Shamar Turners? And what do you think about Guzby? Where's your gut on him based on the fact that his most reasonable comp over this last 13 years, it's a picture perfect comp to second to last year Kelvin Banks.
I think you perfectly laid it out. I don't think he should go out this year. Not only because I think that next year's class at tackle is a little bit weaker. I think there's 4 dudes that are going to end up being graded ahead of him right now. Probably gets a second round grade when it comes to the NFL stuff in January. And I think that that's going to send him back. And I think he can take a massive. You saw the last 2 games in your deep dig grades, how great he's graded out. And one of them being against, arguably his best competition of the year. You brought up Cassius Howell. Cassius Howell's really good, right? 5th-year guy, 3 years at Bowling Green, 2 years at A&M. 6 of his sacks this year came against Mississippi State and Utah State. His 3 worst games from a pass rush perspective, Notre Dame, Anthony Knapp, going to be a top 10 pick next year. Trevor Guzby, Texas, going to be a first-round pick next year. And the third one was Missouri, who's against Caden Green. That was the only team out of those 3 that he got 1 sack against was Missouri. So his 3 toughest offensive linemen that he had to go against, he struggled against. Now, everyone's going to flock to, that LSU game when he got in that guy's face. Well, that's a young offensive tackle on a bad football team that, the only person in America that thought the LSU offensive line was good was Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly is no longer the coach there for a reason. And Cassius Howell took advantage of it. He had 2 sacks in that game, but 6 of his 12 sacks this year come against Utah State and Mississippi State. So I think Cassius Howell is really good, but he's also really undersized when it comes to the NFL conversation. And when you have an athletic offensive tackle like a Guzby, I think you can really take advantage of situations like that, just like they did last year, like you said, against Shamar Stewart, who last time I checked my notes hasn't really done anything in the NFL.